Chapter 1. The Muffin Mayhem. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon as Detective Daisy Doherty stepped into the bustling town square, a basket of freshly baked muffins cradled in her arms. With her soft curls bouncing with each step, Daisy exuded an air of determined optimism that never failed to brighten even the dreariest of mornings. It was the day of the annual town bake-off, a beloved tradition where neighbors competed to see who could concoct the most mouth-watering treats. Daisy, renowned for her delectable blueberry muffins, had spent weeks perfecting her recipe, eager to claim the coveted title of bake-off champion once again. But as Daisy approached the judging table, her heart sank like a deflated soufflé. Her prized muffins were nowhere to be found, replaced by a single sheet of parchment bearing a mysterious message. Your muffins may be missing, but the real mystery is just beginning. Dare to uncover the truth, Detective Doherty? A chill ran down Daisy's spine as she read the ominous words. Who would dare to sabotage the bake-off, and why? Determined to unravel the mystery, Daisy set her basket down and slipped into detective mode, her culinary aspirations momentarily forgotten. With a steely glint in her eye, Daisy surveyed the scene, taking note of the colorful array of contestants and their equally colorful creations. There was Mrs. Jenkins with her towering layer cake, Mr. Thompson with his infamous lemon bars, and Chef Pierre, the flamboyant French pastry chef, whose elaborate confections never failed to steal the show. But as Daisy began to question the contestants, she quickly realized that everyone had a motive and an alibi to match. Mrs. Jenkins claimed she was too busy frosting her cake to notice anything amiss, while Mr. Thompson swore he was off sampling his competitors' treats. Only Chef Pierre seemed unfazed by the chaos, his perfectly coiffed hair and twinkling eyes betraying no hint of guilt. Daisy narrowed her gaze, suspecting that there was more to the charming chef than met the eye. As the morning wore on and the sun climbed higher in the sky, Daisy's determination only grew stronger. She may have been a detective by trade and a baker by passion, but today she was on a mission to solve the ultimate mystery, the case of the missing muffins. With a flourish of her apron and a glimmer of mischief in her eye, Detective Daisy Doherty set off into the bustling town square, ready to uncover the truth behind the muffin mayhem and prove once and for all that justice was as sweet as the smell of freshly baked pastries. Chapter 2. A sticky situation. The town square buzzed with anticipation as Detective Daisy Doherty embarked on her investigation, her keen eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of suspicious behavior. She weaved through the throng of contestants and spectators, her nostrils filled with the tantalizing aroma of freshly baked treats mingling with a hint of intrigue. Daisy's first stop was Mrs. Jenkins, whose towering layer cake stood proudly on display. The elderly widow greeted Daisy with a warm smile, her flour-dusted apron evidence of a morning spent in the kitchen. "Good morning, Mrs. Jenkins," Daisy said, flashing her most charming smile. "I couldn't help but notice your impressive cake. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" Daisy leaned in, her voice lowered to a conspiratorial whisper. "Can you recall anything unusual happening this morning? Any strangers lurking about or strange noises in the kitchen?" Mrs. Jenkins shook her head, her gray curls bouncing with the motion. "No, nothing out of the ordinary. I was too focused on getting my cake just right to notice anything else." Daisy thanked Mrs. Jenkins and moved on to her next suspect, Mr. Thompson, whose lemon bars had won him accolades in years past. The portly man wiped a bead of sweat from his brow as Daisy approached, his pudgy fingers twitching nervously. "Ah, Detective Doherty," Mr. Thompson said, attempting to sound jovial. "To what do I owe the pleasure of your visit?" Daisy arched an eyebrow, noting the telltale signs of anxiety in Mr. Thompson's demeanor. "Just doing my duty, Mr. Thompson. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about this morning's events?" Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting around the square. "I suppose not, but I can assure you I had nothing to do with those missing muffins." I was too busy perfecting my lemon bars to even think about sabotage. Daisy made a mental note of Mr. Thompson's alibi and moved on, her suspicions growing with each passing moment. But it was Chef Pierre who captured her attention next, the flamboyant Frenchman holding court at his makeshift pastry station. "Bonjour, detective," Chef Pierre exclaimed, his voice as melodious as a symphony. "To what do I owe the pleasure of your company on this fine morning?" Daisy smiled, though her eyes remained sharp. "Just a few questions, Chef, if you don't mind. Have you noticed anything unusual happening around here today?" Chef Pierre shrugged, a twinkle of mischief in his eye. "Ah, but what is unusual, my dear detective? In a place like this, where creativity reigns supreme, one must expect the unexpected." Daisy nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that Chef Pierre was hiding something. With a polite farewell, she left the enigmatic chef behind and continued her investigation, determined to uncover the truth behind the muffin mayhem. As the morning turned to afternoon, and the sun reached its peak, casting a warm glow over the town square, Daisy found herself no closer to solving the mystery of the missing muffins. Despite her best efforts and tireless questioning, the puzzle remained stubbornly unsolved, like a tantalizing riddle just beyond her grasp. But one thing was certain: Daisy's determination burned brighter than ever. With each passing hour, her resolve only strengthened, fueled by a fierce sense of justice and an unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth. She knew that she couldn't rest until she had cracked the case wide open and revealed the culprit behind the baffling disappearance of the beloved bake-off treats. With a steely glint in her eye and a determined set to her jaw, Daisy vowed to press on, undeterred by the twists and turns that lay ahead. For she knew that every mystery held its own secrets, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to seek them out. And as the shadows lengthened and the day wore on, Daisy set her sights on the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay in store on her quest for justice. Chapter 3. The Peculiar Pastry Chef. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the town square, Detective Daisy Doherty found herself drawn back to the enigmatic figure of Chef Pierre. With each passing moment, her suspicions deepened, like a pot of simmering stew reaching its boiling point. Approaching the colorful pastry station where Chef Pierre held court, Daisy plastered on her most disarming smile, though her mind churned with questions. What secrets lay beneath that flamboyant exterior? And could Chef Pierre be the elusive culprit behind the missing muffins? "Bonjour, detective." Chef Pierre greeted her with a flourish, his French accent rolling off his tongue like melted butter. "Come to sample my latest creation, perhaps? I assure you it is magnifique." Daisy chuckled, though her eyes remained fixed on Chef Pierre's every move. "As tempting as that sounds, Chef, I'm actually here on official business. Mind if I ask you a few questions?" Chef Pierre's smile faltered ever so slightly, though he quickly recovered. "But of course, detective. Anything to assist in your investigation." Daisy leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary since we last spoke? Any strange characters lurking about or suspicious activity in the kitchen?" Chef Pierre's gaze lingered on Daisy for a moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "Ah, but what is out of the ordinary, my dear detective? In a town such as ours, where passion and creativity collide, one must expect the unexpected." Daisy arched an eyebrow, her patience wearing thin. "That may be, Chef, but I can't help but feel that there's more to this mystery than meets the eye. And I have a sneaking suspicion that you might just hold the key to unlocking it." Chef Pierre's facade slipped, if only for a fraction of a second. "And what makes you say that, detective?" he asked, his tone laced with a hint of defiance. Daisy smiled, though it held no warmth. "Call it intuition, Chef. Or perhaps just a keen eye for trouble. But mark my words, I won't rest until I've uncovered the truth behind this baffling case." With a curt nod, Daisy turned on her heel and strode away, leaving Chef Pierre to ponder her words in silence. As she disappeared into the crowd, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was closing in on her quarry, like a bloodhound hot on the scent of its prey. But little did Daisy know, the real mystery was only just beginning to unfold, and the road ahead would be fraught with danger, deception, and more than a few surprises. Chapter 4. The Case of the Crumbs. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the town square, Detective Daisy Doherty's investigation into the missing muffins took an unexpected turn. Determined to leave no stone unturned, Daisy set her sights on her next suspect. The town's notorious gossip queen, Mrs. Pettigrew. With her heart pounding like a drumbeat, Daisy approached Mrs. Pettigrew's booth, where the elderly woman sat surrounded by a gaggle of eager listeners, her voice carrying like a melodious song. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Pettigrew," Daisy said, mustering her most congenial smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Mrs. Pettigrew's eyes sparkled with mischief as she regarded Daisy. "Not at all, my dear detective. I'm always happy to make time for a bit of scandal and intrigue." Daisy chuckled nervously, her mind racing with questions. "I couldn't help but notice your keen interest in the goings-on of the town, Mrs. Pettigrew. Have you perhaps heard anything about the missing muffins?" Mrs. Pettigrew's lips curled into a sly grin, though her eyes betrayed a hint of uncertainty. "Why, detective, whatever do you mean? I'm just an innocent bystander, after all." Daisy narrowed her gaze, sensing that Mrs. Pettigrew was hiding something beneath her facade of innocence. "Forgive me if I find that hard to believe, Mrs. Pettigrew. After all, you do have a reputation for being in the know about everything that happens in this town." Mrs. Pettigrew's smile faltered, though she quickly composed herself. "I assure you, detective, I know nothing about those missing muffins. But if you're looking for suspects, perhaps you should take a closer look at your fellow contestants. There's no telling what secrets they might be hiding." With that cryptic warning ringing in her ears, Daisy bid Mrs. Pettigrew farewell and continued her investigation, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Could Mrs. Pettigrew be involved in the muffin mayhem, or was she merely a pawn in a much larger game? As Daisy pondered this question, a glimmer of hope caught her eye. A trail of crumbs leading away from Mrs. Pettigrew's booth, disappearing into the crowd like whispers on the wind. With a surge of excitement, Daisy followed the trail, her heart pounding in her chest. Little did she know, she was about to uncover a clue that would lead her one step closer to unraveling the mystery of the missing muffins and revealing the culprit behind the chaos that had descended upon the town. Chapter 5. Whisking Up Trouble. As Detective Daisy Doherty followed the trail of crumbs through the bustling town square, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of a breakthrough. Each crumb was a breadcrumb leading her closer to the truth, and Daisy was determined to follow them to their source, no matter where they led. The trail wound its way through the crowd, past stalls selling freshly picked produce and handcrafted goods, until finally it came to an abrupt end at the entrance of a quaint little bakery nestled between two towering buildings. Daisy's heart raced as she pushed open the door and stepped inside, the scent of freshly baked bread and sweet pastries enveloping her like a warm embrace. The interior was cozy and inviting, with wooden tables and chairs scattered about and sunlight streaming in through the windows. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged woman with flour-dusted hands and a warm smile. "Welcome to Sweet Delights Bakery," she said cheerfully. "How can I help you today?" Daisy returned the woman's smile, though her mind was elsewhere. "I'm actually here on official business," she explained. "I'm investigating the case of the missing muffins from the town bake-off, and I couldn't help but notice a trail of crumbs leading to your bakery." The woman's smile faltered, though she quickly recovered. "Oh, that? Just a little mishap in the kitchen this morning. Nothing to worry about, I assure you." But Daisy wasn't so easily convinced. She scanned the bakery's interior, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. There was something off about the way the woman was behaving, something that didn't quite add up. "Mind if I take a look around?" Daisy asked, her tone polite but firm. The woman hesitated for a moment before nodding reluctantly. "Of course, detective." but I'm afraid you won't find anything out of the ordinary here." Undeterred, Daisy began to search the bakery, methodically checking every nook and cranny for any sign of foul play. It wasn't long before she stumbled upon a hidden compartment beneath one of the counters, filled with an assortment of baking tools and ingredients. As Daisy examined the contents of the compartment, her suspicions were confirmed. This was no ordinary bakery. It was a covert operation, a front for something much more sinister. But before Daisy could unravel the mystery of the bakery's true purpose, she heard a commotion from outside. With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, she realized that she wasn't alone in her investigation, and that the forces arrayed against her were greater than she had ever imagined. With a quick glance over her shoulder, Daisy knew that she was in for a fight. But she was determined to see the case of the missing muffins through to the end, no matter what dangers lay ahead. Chapter 6. Baking Bad. As the commotion outside grew louder, Detective Daisy Dougherty's instincts kicked into high gear. With a quick glance around the clandestine bakery, she knew she had stumbled upon something far more menacing than a simple case of missing muffins. But before she could delve deeper into the mystery, she had to deal with the unexpected visitors at the door. Daisy moved swiftly, slipping behind a stack of flour sacks as the bakery door swung open to reveal a group of shadowy figures, their faces obscured by dark hoods. They moved with purpose, their footsteps echoing ominously on the wooden floor. "We know you're in here, Detective," one of the figures called out, their voice dripping with menace. "Come out with your hands up and nobody gets hurt." Daisy's heart pounded in her chest as she weighed her options. She was outnumbered and outgunned, but she refused to go down without a fight. With a silent prayer, she reached for the rolling pin tucked into her apron and prepared to defend herself against whatever threats lay ahead. But before she could make her move, a voice called out from the back of the bakery, stopping the intruders in their tracks. "What seems to be the problem, gentlemen?" The voice belonged to the bakery's owner, the middle-aged woman with flour-dusted hands and a warm smile. But there was a hardness in her eyes now, a steely resolve that Daisy hadn't noticed before. "We're here for the detective," one of the intruders growled, stepping forward into the dim light of the bakery. "She's been poking her nose where it doesn't belong, and we're here to put an end to it." The bakery owner's smile never wavered, though Daisy could see the tension in her shoulders as she faced down the intruders. "I'm afraid you'll have to go through me first," she said calmly, her voice betraying no hint of fear. Daisy watched in awe as the scene unfolded before her. The bakery owner, it seemed, was more than just a simple baker. She was a force to be reckoned with, a woman with secrets of her own and a determination to protect them at all costs. With a silent nod of gratitude, Daisy emerged from her hiding place, her rolling pin at the ready. Together, she and the bakery owner faced off against the intruders, their determination unshakable as they prepared to defend their turf against all odds. As the tension in the bakery reached its breaking point, Daisy knew that the true mystery was only just beginning to unravel. But with the bakery owner by her side, she felt a glimmer of hope that together they would uncover the truth behind the sinister operation lurking in the shadows and bring the perpetrators to justice once and for all. Chapter 7. Muffin Madness. With tension thick enough to slice like a cake, Detective Daisy Dougherty and the bakery owner faced off against the shadowy figures who had infiltrated the clandestine bakery. Each second stretched into an eternity as they stood poised for action, their resolve unyielding in the face of danger. But just as it seemed that a confrontation was inevitable, the tension was broken by the sound of footsteps echoing from the bakery's entrance. Daisy's heart skipped a beat as she braced herself for another wave of attackers, but to her surprise, the newcomer was none other than Betty, Daisy's loyal and ever-resourceful sidekick. "Detective!" Betty exclaimed, her eyes wide with concern as she took in the scene before her. "I heard shouting and, oh my, what's going on here?" Daisy breathed a sigh of relief at the sight of her friend, though her nerves remained on edge. "It's a long story, Betty," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. but it seems we've stumbled upon something much bigger than a simple case of missing muffins. Betty's eyes widened with understanding as she took in the scene before her. You mean, this bakery is some kind of front for a criminal operation? Daisy nodded grimly. That's what it looks like. And these intruders seem determined to stop us from uncovering the truth. Betty's jaw clenched with determination as she surveyed the scene before her. Well, they picked the wrong day to mess with us, Detective. We may not have all the answers yet, but we're not about to let a few thugs scare us off. With a shared nod of determination, Daisy, Betty, and the bakery owner prepared to face down the intruders, their hearts pounding in unison as they braced themselves for whatever came next. The odds may have been stacked against them, but they refused to back down, not when the truth was so close within their grasp. As the tension in the bakery reached its boiling point, Daisy knew that the final showdown was imminent. But with Betty by her side and the bakery owner standing firm, she felt a flicker of hope ignite within her, knowing that together they were a force to be reckoned with. With a silent vow to see the case through to its conclusion, no matter what dangers lay ahead, Daisy steeled herself for the battle to come, knowing that the fate of the town and the truth behind the mysterious bakery hung in the balance. Chapter 8. The Great Bake-Off Showdown. As tension crackled in the air like static electricity, Detective Daisy Doherty, Betty, and the bakery owner braced themselves for the inevitable clash with the shadowy figures who had infiltrated the clandestine bakery. With every nerve on high alert and every muscle poised for action, they stood united against the looming threat. But just as the moment of confrontation seemed imminent, a sudden burst of commotion erupted from outside the bakery, drawing the attention of everyone within. Daisy's heart raced as she strained to catch glimpses of the chaos unfolding beyond the bakery's walls, her senses heightened by adrenaline and anticipation. And then, like a whirlwind of chaos, the doors burst open, and the town's residents flooded into the bakery, their voices raised in a cacophony of confusion and concern. What's going on in here? Is everyone okay? Someone said there was trouble at the bakery. Daisy's eyes widened in surprise as she recognized the faces of her fellow townspeople among the crowd. They had come to investigate the source of the disturbance, their solidarity a beacon of hope in the face of danger. With a shared glance, Daisy, Betty, and the bakery owner knew that the time for secrecy was over. It was time to reveal the truth behind the mysterious bakery and the criminal operation that lurked within its walls. Stepping forward, Daisy raised her voice above the din, her words carrying with them the weight of authority and determination. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your bravery in coming to our aid, but it seems we've stumbled upon something much bigger than a simple case of missing muffins. As Daisy recounted the events of the day and laid bare the truth behind the clandestine bakery, a hush fell over the crowd, broken only by the sound of murmurs and gasps of disbelief. But far from being intimidated, the townspeople rallied behind Daisy, their determination unwavering in the face of adversity. Together, they formed a united front against the shadowy figures who had threatened their community, their resolve unyielding as they prepared to take a stand for justice. With the crowd at their backs and their hearts filled with courage, Daisy, Betty, and the bakery owner led the charge as they confronted the intruders head-on, their determination a force to be reckoned with. And as the Great Bake-Off Showdown reached its climax, Daisy knew that victory was within their grasp, not just for themselves, but for the entire town. For justice would prevail, and the truth would finally be revealed, setting the stage for a sweet and satisfying resolution to the mystery that had gripped their community. Chapter 9. A Recipe for Justice. With the Great Bake-Off Showdown in full swing, Detective Daisy Doherty and her intrepid team of allies found themselves locked in a battle of wits and wills against the shadowy figures who had infiltrated the clandestine bakery. As the tension mounted and the stakes soared higher, Daisy's determination burned brighter than ever before, fueled by the unwavering support of her fellow townspeople and the knowledge that justice was within their grasp. In a whirlwind of action and adrenaline, Daisy and her allies fought tooth and nail against the intruders, their resolve unyielding in the face of danger. Blow by blow, They countered every move with precision and skill, their determination never faltering, even as the odds seemed stacked against them. But just when it seemed that all hope was lost, a glimmer of light pierced the darkness, illuminating a crucial clue that had remained hidden in plain sight. With a surge of adrenaline, Daisy seized upon the revelation, piecing together the puzzle with a clarity that bordered on brilliance. And then, in a dramatic twist of fate, the truth was finally revealed, casting aside the veil of deception and laying bare the identity of the true culprit behind the sinister operation was none other than Chef Pierre that had threatened their community. With a mixture of shock and disbelief, Daisy and her allies confronted the mastermind behind the criminal conspiracy, their accusations ringing out like thunder in the stillness of the bakery. And as the truth sank in, the culprit's facade crumbled like a house of cards, leaving behind nothing but the bitter taste of defeat and the sweet satisfaction of justice served. But the victory was bittersweet, tinged with the knowledge that the road ahead would be long and arduous. For even as they celebrated their triumph, Daisy knew that their work was far from over, and that the fight for justice would continue long into the future. And yet, as Daisy looked out upon the faces of her fellow townspeople, their eyes shining with gratitude and admiration, she knew that they were not alone in their struggle. For in the end, it was their unity and resilience that had carried them through the darkest of times, proving once and for all that no challenge was too great when faced with courage, determination, and a dash of humor to lighten the load. With a renewed sense of purpose and a spring in her step, Daisy Doherty looked to the horizon, ready to embark on her next adventure, knowing that whatever trials lay ahead, she would face them head-on with a smile on her face and a song in her heart. For justice was not just a goal to be attained, but a journey to be embraced, one step at a time, one mystery at a time, one muffin at a time. Chapter 10. Baking Beyond Borders. With the culprit unmasked and justice served, Detective Daisy Doherty found herself at a crossroads, her heart filled with a mixture of relief and anticipation for the adventures that lay ahead. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the town square, Daisy bid farewell to her fellow townspeople, their cheers and applause echoing in her ears like a melody of triumph. But even as she prepared to leave her beloved town behind, Daisy knew that her journey was far from over. The thrill of the chase and the allure of mystery beckoned her onward, promising new challenges and discoveries beyond the horizon. With a twinkle in her eye and a spring in her step, Daisy set out on the open road, her trusty sidekick Betty by her side, and a sense of excitement coursing through her veins. Together, they ventured into the unknown, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that wherever they went, adventure was sure to follow. Their travels took them far and wide, from bustling city streets to quaint countryside villages, each destination offering its own set of mysteries to be unraveled and challenges to be overcome. Along the way, Daisy honed her detective skills, learning to trust her instincts and rely on her resourcefulness in the face of adversity. But it wasn't just the thrill of the chase that fueled Daisy's wanderlust. Along the way, she encountered a colorful cast of characters, each with their own stories to tell and lessons to impart. From wise old sages to mischievous tricksters, Daisy embraced the diversity of the world around her, finding inspiration and camaraderie in the most unexpected of places. And through it all, one thing remained constant: Daisy's unwavering commitment to justice and truth. Whether she was solving a murder mystery or uncovering a long-lost treasure, Daisy approached each case with the same tenacity and determination, never resting until the truth was revealed and justice was served. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, Daisy's adventures took her to the farthest reaches of the globe, each new destination offering its own set of challenges and discoveries. But no matter where her travels took her, Daisy knew that her true home was wherever the next mystery awaited, ready to be unraveled by her keen wit and indomitable spirit. And so, with a smile on her face and a sense of excitement in her heart, Detective Daisy Doherty set out into the world, ready to embrace whatever challenges and adventures lay ahead. For in the end, she knew that the greatest mysteries were yet to be discovered and that the journey was just beginning. Keep watching, listening, and practicing. Your hard work will pay off.